back to Bridging the Divide. I'm Ray, and today we're exploring something tender. How do you rebuild trust with family or friends after political conflict? The damage is real. Maybe you haven't spoken in months. Maybe the last conversation ended in silence or shouting. Maybe you're not sure if there's a way back. So let's start by naming the wound. What was said, what was felt, and what was lost. You don't have to rush to repair, but you do have to honor the rupture. Now, political conflict can feel like betrayal. It's not just about disagreement. It's about identity, and safety, and belonging. When someone you love supports something that feels harmful, it shakes the foundation of trust. You might think, how could they believe that? Don't they see what this means for me? And they might be thinking the same thing about you. This is where the rupture begins. So let's talk about silence again. Silence can be protective, but it can also be a story. In the absence of conversation, we fill in the blanks. They don't care. We think they'll never change. You might think, I'm better off without them. But these stories might feel true, but they're also incomplete. What if silence isn't rejection, but fear? What if the other person is waiting for a signal that it's okay and it's safe to speak? So we need to look at emotional distance. Sometimes we step back to protect ourselves. That's valid. But distance can become a habit, a default, a wall. So ask yourself, am I protecting my peace or avoiding my pain? Is this silence healing me or hiding me? There's no right answer, only honest ones. So let's talk about choice. Rebuilding trust is a choice, and it's not mandatory. You get to decide. Is this relationship worth the risk? Do I feel emotionally safe enough to try? What boundaries do, I need to protect myself. Repair isn't about pretending nothing happened. It's about choosing to move forward with clarity. So let's talk about readiness now. You might want to reconnect, but you're not ready, or they're not ready. That's okay. You can say, I'm thinking about you. I'm not ready to talk, but I'm open. Or you could say, I hope we can reconnect when the time is right. Because repair begins with readiness, not pressure. Now let's talk about some small steps. Because rebuilding trust doesn't start with a deep conversation. It starts with a gesture, a text, a shared memory, a quiet check-in. You might say, I saw something that reminded me of you. Or, I miss our conversations. You might say, I'd like to reconnect if you're open. Because these aren't fixes, they're invitations. And every invitation is a step toward healing. So let's talk about vulnerability. Vulnerability is risky. You might be rejected. You might be misunderstood. You might be even hurt again. But here's a deeper risk. Staying disconnected from someone you still care about. Because vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the bridge between rupture and repair. So let's talk about that emotional safety again. You can't rebuild trust without safety. And safety means you can speak without being shamed. You can listen without being attacked. You can disagree without being dismissed. You can say, I want this to be a safe place. I'm not here to win. I'm here to reconnect. Safety isn't optional. It's foundational. Now let's talk about boundaries again. Because boundaries protect connection. They don't prevent it. You can say, I'm willing to talk, but not about politics today. Or I need us to pause if things get heated. Or I want to reconnect, but I need emotional honesty. Because boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges without guardrails. So let's talk about repair language. Repair language is gentle, clear, and emotionally attuned. You can say, I regret how I handled that, or I want to understand you better, or I'm sorry for the silence. But you don't have to explain everything. You just have to open the door. Now let's talk about the listening, because listening is the most powerful repair tool that you have. It says, I'm here, I care, I'm willing to hear your story. You can say, I didn't know that mattered to you. I want to understand even if I don't agree, because listening builds trust, and trust rebuilds connection. Now let's talk about shared history again. You've been through things together, birthdays, losses, holidays, and milestones. And that history matters because it's not erased by conflict. You can say, I've been thinking about our trip to the lake. I miss the way we used to laugh. I still treasure those memories because shared history is emotional glue. Now let's talk about grief. Repair doesn't mean everything goes back to normal. You might still grieve what was lost, the version of them you hoped they'd become, the version of you that felt safe. That grief deserves space. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. We need to talk about forgiveness, because forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing not to carry the weight forever. You can say, I'm still hurt, but I'm willing to try. I'm not ready to forgive, but I'm open to healing. Because forgiveness is a process, not a performance. And lastly, let's talk about legacy, because this moment matters. Not just for the relationship, but for the legacy you're shaping. You're modeling something rare, because emotional courage in a polarized world is very rare. Please don't forget, your children are watching, your community is watching, and your future self is watching. So I'll leave you with this. What legacy do you want to leave in how you showed up this moment? Let that question guide your next step. Whether it's a conversation, a pause, or a quiet gesture of repair. Remember, you take care and stay connected.